What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Alright guys, so we are going to cover some classic Marvel. Well, not really classic Marvel because this story did come out in the mid 2000s, but I do want to backtrack in time to the point where Marvel was on fire. When they wrote their stories, they were good, they were amazing. And so guys, I want to go back in time to the mid 2000s and cover the Mighty Avengers Volume 1. Now guys, this story does take place right after Civil War, the original Civil War, the better one, because no one likes Civil War 2. But this does take place right after Civil War 1. And guys, this is Iron Man's team. Well, technically it is Captain Marvel's Avenger team. But guys, this does take place, like I said, right after the original Civil War, where Iron Man believes that the world still needs a team called the Avengers. So guys, let's go ahead and dive into this story right here. I do hope you enjoy. Now guys, when it comes to the Mighty Avengers issue number 1, this book is broken down into two halves. The first half tells us how the team came together to become the new Avengers of Earth. But the second half of the story tells us how the team is fighting against these monsters for their first mission. And so guys, we are going to tackle the first half first with how the team came together. Now, you do have Tony Stark call up Miss Marvel. Now, by the way, this is Carol Danvers' Miss Marvel, not the new Miss Marvel, the old school Miss Marvel. And so you have Tony Stark call up Carol Danvers, and he's kind of like, listen, I am making a new team of Avengers, but I want you to be the leader of the new Avengers because I believe that you will be a great leader for this team. Matter of fact, I want you to pick the team members you want on your new team. I will be on your new team, but you are the leader of the new Avengers. Now, you do have Carol Danvers accept this offer to be the leader of the new Avengers. But here's the thing right here. Even though Tony Stark told her that she'll be able to pick the characters that she wants on her team, Tony Stark basically picks the teammates for her. He's kind of like, listen, we're going to get Black Widow and Wasp and also Ares. Oh, and we're also going to get Wonder Man and the Sentry. These are going to be your team members for your new team. And so with him choosing every single character that he wants on her team, you have Carol Danvers wonder, well, is this my team or your team? Because you told me that this is my team to lead, that I'll pick the characters I want on this team. But here you are picking every single person for me. And so guys, the first half of issue number 1 of the Mighty Avengers is just Tony Stark basically picking the team out for Carol Danvers to lead later. Now, we do jump over to the second half, which by the way is 4 hours after the first half, because the team has been called together to fight against some monsters in New York. Now, you do have the new Mighty Avengers fight against these monsters in New York, and they're beating them down pretty easily. But here's the problem right here. While they're fighting these monsters, two things happen in this book. The first thing, you have every single member of the Avengers wonder, okay, what in the world is going on? Where did these monsters come from? And you do have some characters say it has to be the Mole Man, because it makes sense. These creatures just look like the Mole Man's creations, so it has to be him. And so while the heroes are trying to decide what to do next while they're fighting against these monsters, Iron Man gets a notice from S.H.I.E.L.D. that all over the world, the weather of the world is going crazy. You have earthquakes, volcanoes erupting, you have tsunamis, you have all these natural disasters happening all over the earth. And so you have Iron Man saying, listen team, Even though right now we're fighting against these crazy monsters, all over the world, the weather is going crazy. Like I said, there's earthquakes, volcanoes erupting, hurricanes. If you name it, it's happening right now, all over the world. And so Tony's saying, listen, we have to wrap this up fast because something is going on with the world. Now, the Mole Man does arrive, and he does admit that he did send these creatures to attack New York. But he says because somebody destroyed my home underground. I told y'all to leave me alone, and I will leave you guys alone. The underground world belongs to me, but one of you guys came down there and destroyed my home world. And so it's kind of like, who did that? Who went down there to destroy your home world? Now, while the Avengers are talking to Mole Man, Iron Man starts to act weird. Matter of fact, he starts to change. Like his body is breaking apart and being re-imaged to something else, something different. And then out of nowhere, a big explosion happens where Tony was at. And after the smoke clears, all the Avengers look and see that Iron Man has been turned into a woman. And it's kind of like, wait, what? What happened to Iron Man? He just turned into a woman. And that wraps up issue number 1 of the Mighty Avengers. Now, when it comes to the Mighty Avengers issue number 2, you would think that something big would happen in this book right here. Like some big crazy thing would happen in this book. Because the way part 1 ended with Iron Man being turned into a woman is kind of like, okay, so something big must happen in part 2. The thing is, nothing really big happens in part 2. Part 2 is mostly just fluff. But we still have to cover part 2. Now, you do have the Avengers look at this woman. They're kind of like, okay, who is she? Why did Iron Man just turn into a woman for? What in the world is going on? Now, you do have Ares and Sentry say, listen, we have to attack her. She is a threat. She could probably wipe us out. Let's go ahead and take care of her right now. And the thing is, you have Ares and Sentry try to attack her. And the thing is, this woman, bam, takes them both out like it was nothing. Now guys, you're talking about Ares, a god, Sentry, a powerful being in Marvel Comics, being taken out together by this random woman. And so it's kind of like, what in the world is going on? How can the Avengers fight against this? Because right now it seems like they can't. Now, you do have Miss Marvel say nobody else is going to attack her, because that is still Tony. If we attack her, we are attacking Tony, and we don't know what will happen to Tony if we attack this woman. And so you have the heroes just stand there. They wait. They're kind of like, okay, what do we do? Now, Mole Man walks up. He's kind of like, did you destroy my homeworld, the underground world that I built for myself and my creatures? And she says, yes. It was an accident, but I did. And Mole Man gets ticked off. He's kind of like, so it's you who killed my monsters, who killed my children. I am going to attack you. Now, Mole Man sends in all his forces against her. The thing is, she wipes them all out literally in a blink. Like, bam, they're all gone. And it's kind of like, dang, this girl is powerful. She knocked out Sentry. She knocked out Ares. She took out a whole army full of Mole Man creatures like it was nothing. And so you have the Avengers wonder, what in the world can they do? Now you do have Carol Danvers say, we are going to retreat. we're going to retreat and come up with a new game plan to fight against this creature. But right before they leave, Wasp, she realized something, that this woman looks just like her. And so Wasp walks up to her and asks her, why in the world do you look like me? And you have this woman say, because I love you. And it's kind of like, well, that's creepy. Like some evil woman just took the place of Iron Man's body, looks just like Wasp, and tells Wasp the reason why she took this form is because she loves Wasp. So why? And you have Wasp walk away and she says, that is Ultron. We need to call up my ex-husband. We need to call up Hank because Ultron is back. Now guys, when it comes to the Mighty Avengers, issue number 3, with this book right here, you do pick up just moments after issue number 2 of the Mighty Avengers. And so with this book right here, you have the Avengers retreating. They're kind of like, listen, Ares got his butt kicked. The Sentry, our most powerful character right now, got his butt kicked. We need to retreat and come up with a new game plan on how we're going to stop Ultron. Because right now, we can't stop him or her. We can't stop Ultron. We can't. We have to retreat. And so as the Avengers retreat, you have Miss Marvel say 2 things. First, somebody get a hold of Hank Pym. And 2, Sentry, I need you to stay here to fight against Ultron because you are, again, our most powerful character. We need you here to protect us, but also to protect the world. Now, as soon as the Avengers get back on S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, they do call up Hank Pym. The thing is, Hank Pym is ignoring every single phone call from S.H.I.E.L.D. for one good reason. Because he's about to get down with Tigra. He's on a date. And they're about to get down in some dirty business. And so he's kind of like, listen, S.H.I.E.L.D., I need y'all to stop calling me because I'm busy with my girl. Of course, S.H.I.E.L.D's all like, listen, man, the world is falling apart. And so you have some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents bust through his door, kind of like, hey, man, we need your help. Your creation is back. So let's go. And they take Hank Pym away from his girl and bring him on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier. Now, as soon as he gets there with the rest of the Avengers and start talking to each other about what can they do, Ultron makes his move, or her move, whatever it is right now. But Ultron makes its move, and it's kind of like, okay, so you got my creator. All right, cool. Well, you know what? I am going to cut off the power of the helicarrier. And so the helicarrier starts to fall down out of the sky into the ground. Now the Sentry, he sees it. He flies up and saves the Avengers from crashing into the earth with the helicarrier. But right after he does that, you do have this random robot appear out of nowhere. And thing is, it's one of Iron Man's armor. And it flies in and says, listen, if you are receiving this message, that means one thing. Tony Stark is dead. And so it's kind of like, wait a second. Is Marvel trying to do a slow moment right here by slowly killing off Tony Stark? Now, of course we know, because the story is really old, that Tony Stark's alive. But at first, it did seem like Marvel's trying to do a slow thing right here by getting rid of Tony Stark. And guys, that's how issue number 3 closes. Now guys, when it comes to the Mighty Avengers issue number 4, this is where we get to learn more about what in the world is going on. What is Ultron's big plan? Because so far all we know is that Ultron wants to take out the human race and replace the human race with itself ruling over Earth. And so it's kind of like, okay, We do know that Ultron wants to get rid of the human race, but how is Ultron going to do that? And so, with the armor of Tony Stark arriving at the end of issue number 3 to tell the mighty Avengers, if you are receiving this message, that means Tony Stark is dead. You do have this armor tell the mighty Avengers more information and saying that, listen, before Tony Stark was supposedly killed by Ultron, Tony Stark was working on satellites all over the world that could control the weather. Now, guys, remember, right before Tony Stark turned into a woman, that was a big piece of information we got. That the weather all over the world was going crazy. Tony Stark told the Avengers that before he turned into Ultron. He told them that there are earthquakes happening, volcanoes erupting, hurricanes all over the world happening right now. And he had no clue why. You have the armor of Tony Stark tell the mighty Avengers that out in space there are satellites that are able to control the weather. And so you have some of the Avengers go out into space to blow up those satellites to save the Earth. And so you do have the Avengers kind of like, okay, we found a way to stop Ultron. But then you have Ultron say this right here. Fine. It's time for plan B. And out of nowhere, a big EMP happens all over the world, which also means the helicarrier starts to fly down again for the second time. Now, of course, you do have the Avengers save the helicarrier, save other things out there that are falling out of the sky thanks to this EMP. But you have the Avengers kind of wondering, what in the world is Ultron talking about? Was that Ultron's big idea, plan B right there? And so you have the Avengers trying to think of what was Ultron thinking for her plan B, because plan B, a simple EMP, that can't be it. And so as the Avengers are thinking about what Ultron is trying to do, we do jump over to Ultron breaking into Stark Tower, because Ultron is about to kill Linda Reynolds, the wife of the century. And right before we close book number 4, we do jump over to a small military base that tells us, the readers, that they got power back, but somebody has taken over their computer system and have launched their nukes at a certain target across the world. And so that is Ultron's big game plan right there, to fire all kinds of different nukes all over the world. Now, guys, when it comes to the Mighty Avengers issue number 5, before we dive into this book right here, I did forget to mention one thing that took place back in part 4. When I said Ultron was about to kill the wife of the century, I forgot to mention that Ultron does kill the wife of the century. He does kill Linda Reynolds. And so with that piece of information, we can now dive into part 5 with the Sentry finding his wife on the ground dead. And so Ultron is kind of like, I won. I fired the nukes all over the world. I killed the wife of the most powerful man on Earth right now. The Avengers are busy. I am going to kill off the human race. And so, jumping back to the Sentry does go to the body of his dead wife, picks up the body, and he starts to cry because his loved one, the one person he has left in the world, just died. Now, you do have the Sentry put his hand over the face of his wife, and his hand starts to glow. Now, we do not get the chance to see what happens right after he does that, because the next page, the Sentry goes off to fight against Ultron, and it's a one-on-one battle between these two characters. In the Avengers, the rest of the Avengers, they can't help Sentry right now fight against Ultron, because they are trying to stop all these missiles from blowing up the Earth. And matter of fact, Ultron has taken over every single armor of Iron Man's from the past to the future. If Iron Man was going to wear something he made in a future mission, it has been taken over by Ultron. Every armor that Tony Stark made in the past has also been taken over by Ultron. Ultron is leading an army full of robots against the Avengers, missiles flying all over the earth right now. And so it's kind of like the Avengers have their handful. Ultron might actually win this battle. Now, you do have Ares talk to Hank Pym and kind of like, listen, I have an idea. You just made a virus that can shut down Ultron, but the only way to get Ultron to take this virus is from the inside. And so you have Ares saying, listen, you were able to be Ant-Man years ago with some technology. Give me that technology, and I will use the technology to fly into the mouth of Ultron to shut down Ultron completely. So you have Hank Pym look at Ares kind of like, well, that's a smart plan. I mean, yeah, here's the virus. Here's my tech that made me Ant-Man shrink down just to get inside Ultron's mouth, down his throat, to the point where you can give Ultron the virus. And so that's what happens. You have the Avengers fight against Ultron just long enough for Ares to fly into the mouth of Ultron to give this virus. And that's how part 5 ends, with Ares going into the mouth of Ultron to deliver the virus. Now guys, when it comes to the Mighty Avengers issue number 6, this book right here, it does wrap everything up for the Avengers. Because guys, with Ares going inside the mouth of Ultron, delivering the virus that Hank Pym made, Ultron was easily defeated. With Ultron being defeated, a lot of things happen. The first thing that happened, all the armors that Ultron was controlling stopped fighting against the Avengers. All the missiles that were being fired all over the world, they stopped flying to their targets. Matter of fact, the biggest thing to happen after Ultron was defeated was that Ultron turned back into Tony Stark. And so with that right there, it tells us Tony Stark did not die. Tony Stark is still alive. He is here and he ain't going nowhere for right now. But it's kind of like, okay, so we got Tony back. And so with that all happening right there, it's kind of like, dang, that's crazy. But one more big thing happens in this book right here. Because guys, we do jump over to the Sentry. Because guys, back in part 5, like I said, we saw his hand glow over the face of his wife. But we did not get the chance to see what happened to her with his hand glowing. We come to find out that the Sentry has a new power. The power to bring people back to life. Because his wife is alive again. And so it's kind of like, yo, what happened? Like, that's impossible. The Sentry was able to bring her back alive. She was dead. She was killed by Ultron, and she's alive again. And so seeing that right there is huge. Now, to wrap this book up, we do jump back over to Tony Stark, because you do have the Avengers telling Tony everything he missed, telling him he was a woman, that Ultron took over his body. Ultron fired nukes all over the world, took over his armors to fight against them, did all these different things to get rid of the human race. And so Tony's kind of like, well, thank God that you guys defeated Ultron. And so the Avengers leave Tony in his room to get some rest. But right before he falls asleep, Spider-Woman appears with the body of Elektra. But it's not Elektra. It's a scroll. And guys, this is the first book of many that leads into the big event that I might cover in the future, Secret invasion. But anyways, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. Please leave me a like down below and also subscribe for more comic book videos in the near future. But anyways, guys, I'm out of here and I will see you guys in the next comic book video. Hit that like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.